YOLO Composing Gloves here, and today we're going to be diving into vocoders and a vocoder-based sound. We're going to be looking at specifically how to make this sound right here. Here's what it sounds like. Pretty nice. Let's listen to it one more time. If my thing will stop. There it goes. So we got a nice chord progression, things going down. We're going to be looking at how to make this bow wow, bow wow, bow wow. Whoa, and I need this thing. I actually gave it another couple tries to make like a little jam, and I think they're worth showing you. Here's one. There's two more. There's this one. Fun add tones for these. I really enjoyed the chords. Now, these chords are kind of weird. I just was sort of putting notes in, but I also came up with this. So pretty nifty difty, if that's a thing the kids are saying these days. I don't think it is. Anyways, let's look at how to make this sound. Now, shockingly, or not shockingly, there is no filter in this sound. This is the idea. I took a saw wave and I took another saw wave and I put it in one vocoder, one to modulate the other. Then I just messed with each saw wave until I got something cool. But it was kind of interesting because the way a vocoder works, if you don't know, you should go look up some vocoder videos on my channel. The way a vocoder works is there's a signal that modulates and a signal that carries. The modulating signal gets sent in and it goes through a series of filters that look at the different components, and then it creates like a profile according to the amplitude and whatnot. And it uses that to affect the carrier signal. So if I had like my voice would be the modulating signal, and I could have the carrying signal be like a synthesizer. And then when I talk, the frequency components of my voice would change these filters in the vocoder, and then those filters would affect the synthesizer. So there'd be like a correlation between my voice and the synth, making it sound like the synth is talking. That's the idea. It was a voice encoder. That's what it was originally. And then music people got a hold of it and went nuts. So, okay, what I have here is I have saw wave 1, which is currently, let's do this right from the get-go. So let's send these out to their bass track. So a saw wave and another saw wave. And they're harmers because I like harmor. And let's send this one to track 6. I mean, just send it to 2 tracks. These are on track 6 and 7. So I'm going to send them track 6 and 7. And let's name the top one mod for modulator and the bottom one care for carrier, because it carries and it cares. It cares about your sound. Then once you have them in the channel, I mean, I kind of expect you to already know this, but what the heck, I'll tell you. Make sure you select them and route them into a third channel exclusively. Don't have them going out nowhere else. They should just be going to another channel. Name that one Voc and put a vocoder on there. I'm using Vocodex, which is actually going to be kind of important. Maybe not. I don't know. So let's go ahead and set this back to default. So by default, we have some extra settings in here, which we don't need. We could turn these off because it has to do with basically voice stuff that we're not doing. We could turn this off because this is a fader that will let sound in, and we're not using any of these functions. Next, we need to check to make sure our mod and carrier are correct. So make sure your modulators are modulator. And look at this, our carrier's like not assigned, so we'll put carrier. Now, in the patch you heard, I'm sending stuff into the mod carry channel, and you notice it's very similar. But on this one, I'm using left-right encoding. So anything pan left is modulator, anything pan right is carrier, and that goes into vocoder, which is why that's there. It's built into my template, so this makes it more automatic. So yeah, that's what's going on over there. So now we have our left-right encoding. I mean, not our left-right encoding. We have our encoding set up. And we have just a ton of controls. I don't even want to go into all the controls. Let's just see if we get a sound out. So in order to hear a sound, we need to give it a profile, which will be given by our modulators. So let's just put a note in. This is going to determine the filters, right? So if we have a higher note, the filters will be placed with different frequencies than, say, a lower note. And the result will be a formants change. Well, not necessarily a formants change. It'll be a a resonance change. Let's use that instead. It sounds a little better. And we'll put a note in. This is going to be our carrier, so sound we'll hear. And let's hear it. Come on. There's our beautiful sound. And let's play a lower note because that note's just really high. Let's play an A2 and get rid of that. Nice. Now let's mess with our, what are we on? Piano roll mod. We're on our modulator. Let's bring this down. Because right now we're getting resonance way up there. There it is. And so we got an interesting thing here, right? Because we're sending a saw wave in that's determining filters that are going to change our saw wave going out. And so it's this interesting deal where we could basically change it. Because if we had enough filters, we could just produce the same saw wave, but we can't. And so we're sort of, I had an instructor who would call it frequency quantizing. And I kind of like that idea of frequency quantizing is kind of what we're doing here. See if we can get something cool. So if we bring this down, we get, you know, a lower grindier resonance. Really low is like, it's so low we get, you know, the frequency is too low. So we just need to bring it up higher. And these are sounds are so popular. I'm going to take that note away and just put it up there and play some notes for you on our carrier. And you immediately get like these Daft Punk vibes. Let's play like an A4, a little more reasonable. Play a lower note. Whatever. So we're getting these interesting sounds out. Let's put a little riff in, like a C minor thing. There we go. And let's mess with this. Let's bring this down. And I'm getting some, it doesn't sound quite right. Have I turned everything off here? Oh, order. Okay. It is right. Okay, so order is a big deal. As you saw, I look at it and I'm like, oh, it's the order. So if I take the order down one, that's what I wanted. So order has to do with filters. And those filters aforementioned, you should just look at these as tone control knobs. It's kind of hard to tell what they're going to do, but the lower the order, in this case, order one, is typically a, I don't know, cleaner sound. And that's what's going on there. We could also change the width of the filter here. It's used to detect. And we could control that dynamically with this knob. I forgot exactly what it is. Filter flatness. I guess that has to do with the peak of the filter or whatever. It's been a while since I've touched some menus in here because I generally go for some pretty specific ones. I'll touch the band gain multiplier. As you can see, that could be quite an important menu. Basically, you know, it's a gain multiplier, so some sort of volume according to our filters, what they decided how loud the frequencies were. And we also have band distribution, which will change the distribution of our filters used to detect. And that could be pretty important. I'm going to set mine like that. And also we have band width. And it's similar to this knob because we can get these like really thin bands and we get what I call a glassy kind of sound. It can sound pretty cool, especially when being used for modulation. But this affects the entire spectrum. This menu lets us control it spectrally, regionally, frequency-based. I don't even know. I'm going crazy right now. What we have is like, you know, we can have only frequencies in this region be affected by a level set here. This will still affect everything. It's this just allows us to set sort of a local profile. I am sorry I don't have like a simpler way of saying this. Hopefully that made sense. So I'll show you. See how these are thinner? And as we bring this down, these are affected proportionally more than the others. So pretty interesting. I find that it usually is pretty, adds some grit to the upper area of the spectrum. So I think that's fine. And it's also got like sound goodizer built in and stuff. Really cool stuff. So that's pretty much what we're going to touch in here. And there's, I guess, a little bit of a what's going on. Now let's go ahead and dive into the modulators, because we know our modulator determines like the filter profile. So this is going to have impact based on the note we put in. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a unison on 2 and put a small pitch variation. And if we just put it out for a second, that's what I'm putting in. So we just get some, and if we bring the pitch variation up, we get that sort of, we get phasing. And I'm going to use that for now. So let's put this back to 6. And then let's change our note here. And it doesn't change that much. Now let's go to the carrier. This is where the stuff's going to really start sounding different. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into frequency and I'm going to bring the detune down to 2. This, I mean, some of these timbres you've heard on countless tracks. It's almost mind-boggling how many. And then if we change our resonance here, like that nasally kind of sound is on like all sorts of stuff. So let's bring this back down. Now let's go ahead and take a look at, so that's detune. Frequency will have some. Changing the fundamental isn't always the best idea. It depends on the range you're going to be playing in. Let's also turn on distortion to classic. And let's turn the unison on to 2. You know what I just realized? I think left-right encoding also ensures stuff is mono. So let's go ahead and code this left and this right and make this left-right. Yeah, and I think mono is kind of a big deal on mine. So that's, I guess, a reason why you'd pick one over the other. We're getting stereo out, but I have mono out over here, if you didn't notice. So let's stick with that. So now I'm just going to sort of touch stuff, try and get a closer timbre to what I had before. Yeah, I think that's fine. Magic band number. Let's talk about that. I call them magic for some reason. But number of bands, generally somewhere in this range for this sound. More bands, more filters, less band, less filters. And they, as you can see, have a pretty big impact on the sound. Let's go ahead and touch the... Let's mess with our modulator, see what we can get out of it. I want things to line up a little differently every time, so I'm going to use the phase randomness. If you go the other way, it's spectral, and that changes like every single frequency's phase. We don't want that. We want the whole thing to change. That way it's still sort of a cohesive sound. This is what it would sound like with spectral. That's a little out of control. I mean, we could dial it back. But it's just not a sound I want. I want this. You see how it changed? We're getting like variations every single time. So that's pretty nifty. Every time it re-triggers, it'll start a different position in phase, and that causes different summing. And because we're working in mono, which is why I was like, oh, I think mono might be important, things will sum differently, and that can create quite drastic changes. So who knew? Left-right encoding was a little more important than originally perceived. Let's go ahead and move the unison up to 3. This actually has a pretty big impact. I mean, let's listen to 2. Now 3. We get a little more movement happening. We go to like 4. And as these moves will become more significant as we move, because we'll be adding more and more things to our sound. If I go to my original patch, let's bring up the playlist. Over here, if we go into that one, which I didn't label these, let's call this one mod, and this one carry too. So here, whoops, this move, if I change this to 2, that's a large difference now. Like before, you're probably like, that's not a very big difference. But if I go to like 3, 2, that's a big difference. And if I go to like none, So now you might like one more than the other. What was surprising to me is when I went up to 4 and 5. Like four sounds gritty. They all sound cool. They just, what do you want? And then 5. So I picked 3. I like the sort of resonancy sound you get. I'm not really sure. I don't have a word for that. Someone else might. So anyways, let's go ahead and dive into these patches because they're already sort of set up and we can look at what's going on here. So this is our carrier. Oh, I took the distortion off. I messed with a huge number of distortions throughout this process. So this is the carrier. I turned on legato and portamento because I was running into problems writing for this. So writing with these sounds is quite interesting. I ended up writing like a bunch of stuff and then sort of tearing it apart, and I wound up with this. So what I have here is I have my note E. This is the carrier. So the carrier is just playing one note. But you hear 2 notes because I do a small resonance change. I don't think this is as big a deal. Oh, yeah, okay, there you go. Well, it is kind of a big deal there. But what really creates the illusion of the second note is the movement. I am changing the modulator pitch shift and the modulator bandwidth. And if I open up the vocoder, here they are, and you'll see these guys move. Or these guys, my bad, not this one. And then the combo is just this really, really nice, constantly changing sound. And if you do it in the right way, it can be very pleasant. If I change the order, you get different growl levels, I guess is what you'd call those. But I really like the first one the best. And then let me show you my envelopes here. So that's band distribution, bandwidth, and band gain multiplier. This is like the low end down here. I just removed that. That wasn't doing me any favors. So I got rid of that. And I think that was it that I touched with in there. Now there is a fair amount of post. It's going through a wave shaper, an EQ, which is doing just smallest cut ever. So not that important. And there was also a low pass that was being used at another part. And I ended up not getting rid of it. So, and I left it there because now I'm afraid to remove it because I think I might have used it. I think it's being used in this one over here, way over here. And I don't want to change that. You know, I really like this universal view. I'm so stoked to add that. Pretty pumped for FL20, not going to lie. Been checking pretty regularly because the 5th beta just expired. They might do a 6th beta, but, you know, still stoked. So, all right. So that's the sounds that are coming out. Now, on the sounds on these guys, let's go to the actual patches here. I don't think I put anything on there. Yeah, I didn't put anything. So it's all based in here in just basically a wave shaper and that small EQ cut. And so what I have here is let's look at the notes I decided to put in. So we have the modulation coming up, and this is the what is this? Modulator bandwidth multiplier. So this is turning on and off. And without this, without the pitch shift. So you're going to want to mess with these accordingly. If we go into carrier, that might be it actually for this sound. I do have some harmonic randomness happening. I find that this adds some nice warmth to the end of the sound. I already told you, legato portamento, because when notes overlap, it was not sounding very smooth at all. So I wanted to change that up. And then also, yeah, I guess that was just harmonic randomness. Wow. Pretty, not a complicated sound, but there's like a lot of ideas that go into it, you know? And getting something nice like this out of so like simple a process is sometimes way harder than it at first seems. And over here, like I'm moving things up, but I believe my note is also increasing too, my carrier. No, my carrier is going down and my notes are moving up. You're going to find combos usually work best when they're moving in opposite directions. As notes get lower, resonance goes up. This gives more tone to your sound. And the vice versa. As resonance get lower, notes go up. So they can sort of compensate for the frequency until you get so slow that you can hear like the individual pop, 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 pop. Then you're kind of, doesn't matter what you do. So in this case, I used a chord approach. I went, I believe it was E minor. Yeah, E minor, G major, A major. And I got this sort of like nice, glorious sound. And then over here, I'm doing a first inversion A to a second, a second inversion E. And I guess E is kind of the one in this case since we start with an E. E. Yeah, whatever. Anyways, so I go back to the E here. This is super unstable though, because it's on the second inversion. So it plays well into the songwriting portion, which when you get a sound like this, you know, you got to be like, okay, how am I going to make this into something cool? Then I went through, I wrote out this, I wrote this riff over here first. And I just wanted to make something that really sort of jammed with the sound itself. And so in this attempt, I used the modulator as a rhythmic device as well. And I begin to use things like pitch shifts pretty liberally. So because this is happening on the modulator channel, this is equating to a resonance movement. It's basically like a filter written in the piano roll. Over here, this creates our gap, makes our rhythm come alive, and the resonance changes dynamically with the rhythm, which is pretty darn cool. And then on our carrier, we only actually have an E. That's literally it. And then you just move notes around till you find something you like. And I'm only using the first little bit of this. And I used to always wonder, how do people make these decisions? So this is some insight onto how I sort of did mine. And then over here, I get this cool moment with a really sweet little riff. I really like this. That's nice. Anyways, if you're interested in the notes, these are the notes. And what's important about these kinds of sounds is I was paying more close attention to this downward step motion with basically a neighbor tone. And then, you know, we're going up the minor scale. All right, so this piece, let's look at this by itself. Oh, and we also have, I'm modulating the pluck on one of the harmers and the on signals on this channel, which is why I was randomly turning channels on. So, okay, we have the same thing here, but I just changed the notes. And so the same resonance commands basically as before, only now I follow the minor scale again and I keep to chord tones. So I have like E, and then I view this sort of as a C minor up to B, down the scale, back down to the E to loop again. And it just works out really nice. So yeah, that's that. I think I've told you everything I want to tell you. If you have any questions about this, I guess let me know. I really tried to be as explanatory as possible. I will put this project in the description. No guarantees you'll have these samples. If you've got Black Octopus Leviathan, whenever I'm looking for drum loops just to toss in and try stuff out, I usually go to those because their large drum loops work great and they stretch with tempo, something a lot of other packs don't do, and it's friggin' annoying when you want to sketch really quick. So I really like Black Octopus for that reason. So subscribe and have a blessed day.